The arrival. The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly beyond the reinforced viewports of the Kraxan prison ship. Inside, the cold metallic corridors echoed with the sound of heavy footsteps and the occasional clang of cell doors. Among the newest batch of prisoners being processed was a human male, his face a mask of calm despite the dire circumstances. Zaraket, head of prisoner intake, studied the human with a mix of curiosity and disdain. In her years aboard the Kraxan, she had seen countless species pass through, but humans were a rarity. This one, however, seemed different from the few she had encountered before. "State your name and planet of origin," Zora demanded, her voice a harsh rasp through her translator. The human met her gaze steadily. "Jack Hawkins, Earth." Zora's tentacles twitched in annoyance at his brevity. "Reason for incarceration." Jack's expression remained neutral. "Wrong place, wrong time." With a snort of frustration, Zora input the data into her console. The screen flickered, displaying Jack's biometric information. Nothing remarkable stood out. Average height and build for a human male. No visible augmentations or cybernetic enhancements. Yet something about his demeanor nagged at her instincts. "You'll be assigned to Block C," Zora announced. "Any attempts at escape or rebellion will be met with severe punishment. Do you understand?" Jack nodded once, his eyes never leaving hers. As the guards moved to escort him away, Zora felt a shiver run down her spine. She had a feeling this human would be trouble. The corridors of Block C were a cacophony of alien sounds and smells. Prisoners from dozens of different species occupied the cells, some pacing restlessly, others huddled in corners. Jack was shoved unceremoniously into an empty cell, the energy barrier humming to life behind him. For a long moment, he stood motionless, taking in his surroundings. The cell was spartanly furnished. A simple cot, a waste reclamation unit, and a small terminal for accessing approved information channels. Jack's gaze lingered on the terminal before he moved to sit cross-legged on the floor, his back straight, his breathing slow and controlled. In the cell across from him, a bulbous creature with multiple eye stalks peered at him curiously. "You're new," it gurgled in broken galactic standard. "What's your story?" Jack opened his eyes, regarding the alien calmly. "No story. Just passing through." The creature's eye stalks wobbled in what might have been laughter. "Nobody's just passing through the Kraxan, human. This ship's the end of the line for most." "Most," Jack repeated softly, a ghost of a smile playing at his lips. Before the conversation could continue, a commotion erupted further down the cell block. Shouts and the sound of energy weapons discharging filled the air. Jack rose smoothly to his feet, moving closer to the energy barrier for a better view. A massive four-armed alien was rampaging through the corridor, tossing guards aside like ragdolls. Its thick hide seemed to absorb the stun blasts with little effect. As it neared Jack's cell, their eyes met for a brief moment. The alien's lips curled back in a snarl, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Fresh meat," it growled, its voice like gravel in a cement mixer. Jack's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, his weight balanced on the balls of his feet. But before the confrontation could escalate, a high-pitched whine filled the air. The rampaging alien convulsed, foaming at the mouth, before collapsing to the ground. Captain Drekthar, commander of the Kraxan, stepped into view, a neural disruptor still smoking in his hand. His cold eyes swept over the prisoners before landing on Jack. "Exciting first day, human." Drekthar's voice dripped with sarcasm. "I hope you're not getting any ideas. The Kraxan has held the galaxy's most dangerous criminals for centuries. No one escapes." Jack met the captain's gaze evenly. "I wouldn't dream of it, sir." Drekthar's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more. As the guards dragged away the unconscious alien, the captain's gaze lingered on Jack for a moment longer before he turned and strode away. In the days that followed, Jack fell into the routine of prison life aboard the Kraxan. He kept to himself during meal times and recreation periods, observing the complex social dynamics at play among the diverse array of prisoners. Some species naturally gravitated towards each other, forming alliances based on shared biology or cultural similarities. Others were loners, much like Jack himself. What few failed to notice, however, was the way Jack's eyes constantly scanned his surroundings, taking in every detail. The patrol patterns of the guards, the subtle weaknesses in the energy barriers, the temperaments of his fellow inmates. Nothing escaped his attention. During recreation periods, Jack would find a quiet corner and go through a series of fluid movements, his body flowing from one position to the next with grace and precision. Some prisoners watched him curiously, recognizing the movements as some form of martial art, but none approached him. It was during one of these sessions that Zora Ket found herself observing Jack from the guard station. She had been keeping a close eye on the human since his arrival, waiting for him to cause trouble. But so far, he had been a model prisoner. Fascinating, isn't he? The voice of Dr. Xon, the ship's chief medical officer, startled Zara from her thoughts. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to hide her interest. Dr. Xon's multifaceted eyes glimmered with amusement. "The human. He's not what he seems." Zara's tentacles curled in agitation. "Explain." "I've been analyzing his movements," Dr. Xon said, gesturing towards Jack with one of his spindly arms. "That's no simple exercise routine. It's a highly advanced form of combat training. Every motion is designed to build muscle memory for devastating strikes and evasive maneuvers." Zara felt her earlier unease returning. "Should we inform the captain?" Dr. Xon chittered, a sound Zora had come to recognize as laughter. "And tell him what?" "That we have a prisoner who knows how to fight." "My dear Zara, if that were a crime, half the inmates on this ship would be in solitary confinement." As they watched, Jack finished his routine and sat down in a meditative pose. His eyes closed, his breathing steady and controlled. "No," Dr. Xon continued, his voice low. "For now, we watch and we wait. Something tells me our human friend is going to make things very interesting around here." Zara nodded, her gaze fixed on Jack's serene form. She couldn't shake the feeling that the calm exterior hid a storm waiting to be unleashed, and when it broke, she had a feeling the Kraxan would never be the same. As the ship's artificial night cycle began, plunging the cell block into dim twilight, Jack lay on his cot, eyes open and alert. In the quiet hours, his mind drifted back to Earth, to the dojo where he had spent countless hours honing his skills. He could almost hear the voice of his old master. "Remember, Jack, the true strength of Muay Thai lies not in the power of your strikes, but in the calmness of your mind. In the chaos of battle, be the eye of the storm." A faint smile touched Jack's lips. His master would certainly consider this a test of that philosophy. As he drifted off to sleep, Jack's last thoughts were of home and the long journey that still lay ahead. Whatever challenges the Kraxan had in store, he would face them with the heart of a warrior and the soul of a Muay Thai master. The stage was set, the pieces were in motion, and aboard the Kraxan, floating in the endless void of space, a storm was brewing, one that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy's most secure prison ship. The challenge. Weeks passed aboard the Kraxan, each day blending into the next in a monotonous rhythm of meals, recreation periods, and long hours confined to cells. Yet beneath the surface calm, tension simmered. Jack Hawkins, the enigmatic human prisoner, had become a subject of intense curiosity and speculation among both inmates and staff. In the maze-like corridors of the prison ship, whispers spread like wildfire. Some claimed to have seen Jack perform impossible feats of strength and agility during his solitary training sessions. Others swore he could communicate telepathically with other prisoners. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between the fantastic tales and mundane reality. It was during one particularly crowded recreation period that the delicate balance of power aboard the Kraxan began to shift. Kroll, a hulking Zorblaxian with a reputation for violence, had been eyeing Jack for days. As the human went through his usual routine of controlled movements and breathing exercises, Kroll decided it was time to assert his dominance. "Hey, soft skin," Kroll bellowed, his voice carrying across the recreation area. "You think you're tough with your fancy dance moves." Jack paused mid-motion, his eyes slowly opening to regard the Zorblaxian. The recreation area fell silent, other prisoners backing away to form a loose circle around the pair. "I'm not looking for trouble," Jack said calmly, his stance relaxed but alert. Kroll's laugh was like grinding metal. "Trouble's found you, human. Time to see what you're made of." As Kroll lumbered forward, his massive fists raised, Jack remained perfectly still. At the last possible moment, he shifted his weight, pivoting gracefully to the side. Kroll's punch whistled through empty air, the momentum carrying him forward. With a quick sweep of his leg, Jack sent the larger alien crashing to the ground. The assembled prisoners gasped. No one had ever seen Kroll bested so easily. The Zorblaxian roared in fury, scrambling to his feet and charging at Jack again. This time, Jack met the attack head-on. His movements were a blur, fists and elbows striking with pinpoint accuracy at Kroll's vulnerable points. Each impact produced a dull thud that echoed in the stunned silence of the recreation area. In a matter of seconds, Kroll was on the ground again, groaning in pain. Jack stood over him, not even breathing hard. "We don't have to do this," Jack said quietly. "I have no quarrel with you or anyone else here." Before Kroll could respond, the shrill sound of alarm klaxons filled the air. Guards poured into the recreation area, energy weapons at the ready. Captain Drekthar strode in behind them, his cold eyes taking in the scene. "What's the meaning of this?" he demanded. Kroll, nursing his bruised ego as much as his physical injuries, pointed an accusing finger at Jack. "The human attacked me. He's dangerous." Drekthar's gaze shifted to Jack, who stood calmly amidst the chaos. "Is this true, prisoner Hawkins?" "I defended myself, Captain," Jack replied evenly. "Nothing more." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Take them both to solitary confinement," he ordered the guards. "I'll deal with this personally." As Jack was led away, he caught sight of Zoraket watching from the sidelines. The alien officer's expression was unreadable, but Jack sensed a mix of fascination and apprehension in her gaze. The solitary confinement cell was even more Spartan than Jack's regular quarters. A simple light panel in the ceiling provided harsh illumination, and the only furnishing was a hard bench protruding from one wall. Jack sat cross-legged on the floor, his breathing steady and controlled. He had faced far worse conditions in his training. This was merely another opportunity for meditation and mental preparation. Hours passed before the cell door hissed open. Captain Drekthar entered, flanked by 2 guards and Dr. Xan. "I've reviewed the security footage," Drekthar said without preamble. "Your account of events was accurate, but that doesn't explain how a single human managed to incapacitate one of the strongest inmates on this ship." Jack met the captain's gaze calmly. "As I said, I defended myself." Dr. Xan stepped forward, his multifaceted eyes glimmering with interest. "Captain, if I may, I've been studying the human's physiology and behavior since his arrival. What we witnessed today was a display of a highly advanced martial art form. Earth calls it Muay Thai, a combat style that emphasizes striking using fists, elbows, knees, and chins." Drekthar's expression remained impassive, but a flicker of curiosity passed through his eyes. "And you neglected to inform me of this because I saw no reason to, until now," Dr. Xan replied. "Many of our inmates have combat training, but I've never seen anything quite like this." The captain turned back to Jack. "Well, prisoner Hawkins, care to elaborate on your hidden talents?" For a long moment, Jack was silent, weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. "Muay Thai is more than just a fighting style, Captain. It's a discipline of the mind and body. I've trained in it since childhood, but I have no interest in using it to cause trouble here." Drekthar's laugh was cold and humorless. "No interest in trouble. You've already caused plenty by demolishing our resident bully. The power dynamics on this ship are delicate, Hawkins. Your little display has upset the balance." Perhaps, Dr. Xon interjected. We could use this to our advantage, Captain. All eyes turned to the medical officer. Dr. Xon's mandibles clicked excitedly as he continued. The Galactic Prison Authority has been pressuring us to implement more structured rehabilitation programs. What if we were to introduce a controlled combat sport? It could serve as an outlet for aggression and a means of establishing a new hierarchy among the inmates. Drekthar's eyes narrowed as he considered the idea. And I suppose you'd have our human friend here as the star attraction. Precisely, Dr. Xon nodded. It would give the other prisoners something to aspire to, a way to earn respect and privileges through skill rather than brute force. The captain was quiet for a long moment, his gaze never leaving Jack. And what do you say to this, Hawkins? Interested in becoming our resident gladiator? Jack's expression remained neutral, but his mind raced. This could be an opportunity, a chance to gain more freedom of movement, to learn more about the ship and its systems. But it also carried risks. He'd be putting himself in the spotlight, making it harder to plan any potential escape. I'll do it, Jack said finally, on one condition. I want to teach, not just fight. If we're going to do this, let's make it about more than just violence. Let's give these inmates a chance to learn discipline, self-control. Drekthar's laugh was genuine this time. You aim high, Hawkins. Very well. We'll try it your way for now. But remember, one step out of line, and you'll spend the rest of your sentence in a cell so deep in the bowels of this ship, you'll forget what starlight looks like. As the captain and his entourage left, Jack allowed himself a small smile. The game had changed. The pieces rearranged on the board. It wasn't freedom, not yet. But it was a start. Over the next few days, word spread quickly through the Kraxen. The recreation area was transformed. A makeshift ring set up in its center. Prisoners from all blocks were brought in to witness the inaugural match, Jack Hawkins versus Kroll, the rematch that would set the tone for this new era aboard the prison ship. As Jack stepped into the ring, he felt the weight of countless alien eyes upon him. This was more than just a fight. It was a statement, a demonstration of human capability in a galaxy that often underestimated his species. He took a deep breath, centering himself, calling upon years of training and discipline. Across the ring, Kroll snarled, his previous humiliation fueling his rage. The Zordlaxian had been augmented with strength-enhancing cybernetics, his already formidable physique now even more dangerous. Captain Drekthar's voice rang out over the assembled crowd. This match will demonstrate a new way forward for the Kraxen. Controlled combat, with rules and consequences. The winner will earn privileges and respect. The loser, his cold gaze swept over the prisoners, will serve as a reminder of the old way's failures. A hush fell over the crowd as Jack and Kroll faced each other. The human's calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the alien's seething anger. As the signal to begin was given, Kroll charged forward with a roar, his cybernetically enhanced fists swinging with deadly force. Jack moved like water, his body flowing around Kroll's attacks. Each dodge was followed by a precise strike. An elbow to the ribs, a knee to the midsection, a fist to the jaw. The Zordlaxian's superior strength meant nothing if he couldn't land a hit. The assembled prisoners watched in awe as the human systematically dismantled his larger opponent. It wasn't just a fight. It was a demonstration of skill, strategy, and the power of a disciplined mind over brute force. In the end, Kroll lay defeated on the mat, his cybernetic enhancements sparking from the precise damage Jack had inflicted. The human stood victorious, barely winded, his eyes scanning the crowd of stunned inmates and guards. Captain Drekthar stepped forward, his expression a mixture of surprise and calculation. The winner and new combat instructor for the Kraxen Rehabilitation Program, Jack Hawkins. A cheer went up from the assembled prisoners, a sound filled with equal parts excitement and trepidation. As Jack raised his hand in acknowledgement, he caught sight of Zuraket standing at the edge of the crowd. The alien officer's expression was inscrutable, but Jack sensed a newfound respect in her gaze. As the prisoners were led back to their cells, the atmosphere aboard the Kraxen had shifted. Whispers of the humans' prowess spread like wildfire. In the span of a single match, Jack Hawkins had become a legend. But for Jack, this was just the beginning. As he was escorted to his new quarters, larger and more comfortable than his old cell, a privilege of his new position, his mind was already working on the next phase of his plan. The Kraxen had given him an opportunity, a chance to move more freely and interact with a wider range of prisoners and systems. Freedom was still a distant goal, but with each passing day, it grew closer. Jack allowed himself a small smile as the door to his new room slid shut. The game had changed, and he was now a key player. The Kraxen, and perhaps the galaxy itself, had no idea what was coming. The revolution. Weeks turned into months aboard the Kraxen, and the once chaotic prison ship had undergone a remarkable transformation. At the center of this change was Jack Hawkins, the human Muay Thai master who had become both a legend and a catalyst for reform. The makeshift fighting ring in the recreation area had evolved into a full-fledged training center. Prisoners from various species gathered daily to learn the art of Muay Thai, adapted by Jack to accommodate the diverse physiologies of his alien students. But more than just teaching combat techniques, Jack was imparting the philosophy behind the art: discipline, respect, and self-control. On this particular day, Jack stood at the center of the training area, surrounded by a diverse group of inmates. His voice carried clearly as he addressed them. "Remember, the goal isn't to hurt your opponent," Jack explained, demonstrating a complex series of strikes and blocks. "It's to control yourself, to master your own body and mind. The true battle is always within." Among the spectators, Zora Kett watched with a mixture of fascination and unease. The humans' influence had grown far beyond what anyone had anticipated. Prisoners who had once been uncontrollable were now models of discipline. The number of violent incidents aboard the Kraxen had plummeted. As the training session concluded, Zora approached Jack. "Impressive as always, Instructor Hawkins," she said, her tentacles twitching slightly, a sign of nervousness that Jack had learned to recognize. Jack nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Officer Kett. Is there something I can help you with?" Zara glanced around, ensuring they weren't overheard. "The captain wants to see you." Immediately, a flicker of concern passed through Jack's eyes, but his expression remained neutral. He followed Zora through the winding corridors of the Kraxen, his mind racing with possibilities. Had his true intentions been discovered? Was this the end of the relative freedom he'd been granted? Captain Drekthar's office was a stark, utilitarian space that reflected its occupants' no-nonsense approach. As Jack entered, he found not only the captain, but also Dr. Xan and several high-ranking guards. "Ah, Hawkins," Drekthar's voice was cold as ever. "Your rehabilitation program has been quite successful, perhaps too successful." Jack remained silent, waiting for the captain to continue. "We've received orders from Galactic Central," Drekthar continued, his eyes narrowing. "They're impressed with the changes here. So impressed, in fact, that they want to expand the program. They're sending prisoners from other facilities to learn your methods." This was unexpected. Jack's mind raced, seeing both opportunity and danger in this development. "I see," he said carefully. "And you have concerns about this." Dr. Xan stepped forward, his multifaceted eyes glimmering with excitement. "On the contrary, Instructor Hawkins, we see great potential. Imagine the Kraxen becoming not just a prison, but a center for rehabilitation across the galaxy." Jack could see the calculating look in Drekthar's eyes. This was about more than rehabilitation. It was about power and influence within the Galactic Prison Authority. "Of course," Jack said, choosing his words carefully. "I'd be honored to expand the program, but I'll need more resources, more freedom to implement a full curriculum." Drekthar's laugh was cold. "You ask for much, Hawkins, but very well. You'll have what you need, within reason. But remember, one misstep, and it all comes crashing down." As Jack left the office, His mind was awhirl with possibilities. This was more than he could have hoped for. A chance to interact with prisoners from other facilities, to spread his influence further. But it also meant more scrutiny, more risk. Over the next few weeks, the Craxon buzzed with activity. New prisoners arrived daily, each with their own stories, their own challenges. Jack threw himself into the work, expanding his classes, tailoring his teachings to an ever-widening array of alien physiologies and psychologies. But beneath the surface of this rehabilitation revolution, Jack was planting seeds. In quiet conversations, in subtle lessons woven into his teachings, he was spreading ideas. Ideas of freedom, of justice, of the possibility of a life beyond the confines of the Craxon. It was during one of these expanded classes that the true test of Jack's influence came. A new inmate, a Zenithian known for his psychic abilities, confronted Jack in the middle of a lesson. "You're not what you seem, human." The Zenithian hissed, his bioluminescent skin pulsing with agitation. "I see your true thoughts. You plan to betray us all." The training area fell silent, all eyes turning to Jack. This was the moment that could unravel everything he had worked for. Jack took a deep breath, centering himself. Then, with a speed that left the onlookers gasping, he moved. But instead of attacking, he assumed a defensive stance directly in front of the Zenithian. "You're right," Jack said, his voice calm but carrying to every corner of the room. "I'm not what I seem. None of us are. We're all more than our crimes, more than the labels placed on us by society." The Zenithian's eyes widened in surprise. "You can see into my mind," Jack continued. "Then look deeper. See not just my plans, but my hopes. My belief that every being in this room has the potential for change, for growth." Jack turned, addressing the entire class. "Yes, I dream of freedom. Not just for myself, but for all of you. Freedom from the cycles of violence and retribution that landed us here. Freedom to become something more than what the galaxy has decided we are." A murmur ran through the assembled prisoners. Jack could see the guards tensing, hands moving towards weapons. But he pressed on. "The techniques I'm teaching you aren't just about fighting. They're about control over your body, your mind, your destiny. What you do with that control is up to you. But I have to believe, that given the chance, most of us will choose to be better." For a long moment, the training area was silent. Then, slowly, the Zenithian lowered his accusatory hand. I understand," he said softly. "I see now. You're not our enemy. You're our hope." As if a spell had been broken, the tension in the room dissipated. Prisoners turned to one another, nodding, murmuring in agreement. Even some of the guards looked thoughtful. In that moment, Jack knew he had crossed a line. There was no going back now. He had openly declared his intentions, veiled though they were in the language of rehabilitation. The next move would be critical. As the class dispersed, Jack caught sight of Zara Ket watching from the shadows. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a new intensity in her gaze. She had heard every word, understood every implication. Jack met her eyes, a silent challenge passing between them. Would she report him, or had his words reached her as well? That night, as Jack sat in his quarters, he reflected on the day's events. He had taken an enormous risk, but it had paid off. The seeds of revolution had been planted, not just in the minds of the prisoners, but in the very foundations of the Craxon itself. A soft chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. To his surprise, it was Zara Ket. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and urgent. "What you said today, it changes everything." As Zara entered his quarters, Jack realized that the next phase of his plan was about to unfold. The lines between prisoner and guard, between captor and captive, were blurring. The Craxon was changing, and with it, perhaps, the entire concept of justice in the galaxy. Jack gestured for Zara to sit. "I'm listening," he said, his mind already racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. The revolution had begun, not with violence, but with ideas. And aboard the Craxon, floating in the vast emptiness of space, a new future was taking shape, one that would challenge the very foundations of the galactic order. The Alliance. The Kraxan hummed with an energy unlike anything it had experienced in its long history as a prison ship. In the weeks following Jack's impassioned speech, a subtle but profound shift had occurred among both prisoners and staff. The lines that had once sharply divided them were blurring, replaced by a growing sense of common purpose. At the heart of this transformation was the unlikely alliance between Jack Hawkins, the human Muay Thai master, and Zora Kett, the alien officer who had once viewed him with suspicion. Their late-night conversation had stretched into the early hours of the artificial morning, a meeting of minds that would alter the course of the Kraxan's future. In the bustling main training area, Jack stood before a diverse group of students, a mix of prisoners, and to many surprise, several members of the ship's staff. His voice carried clearly as he guided them through a series of movements. "Remember," Jack said, demonstrating a complex sequence of strikes and blocks, "Muay Thai isn't just about physical technique. It's about harmony between body and mind, about finding balance in chaos." As the class progressed, Jack caught sight of Zora observing from the sidelines. Her presence during these sessions had become a regular occurrence, though she had yet to actively participate. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. After the class dispersed, Zora approached Jack. "Impressive as always, instructor," she said, her tentacles weaving a pattern that Jack had come to recognize as a sign of approval. "The captain wants to see us both." Now, Jack nodded, his face betraying no emotion despite the sudden spike of adrenaline. As they made their way through the Kraxan's winding corridors, Jack's mind raced. Had their covert planning been discovered? Was this the end of everything they'd been working towards? Captain Drekthar's office was as austere as ever, but there was a palpable tension in the air as Jack and Zora entered. The captain's cold eyes regarded them both for a long moment before he spoke. "I've received some interesting reports," Drekthar began, his voice carefully neutral. "It seems your rehabilitation program has had some unexpected side effects. Hawkins, care to explain why I have guards requesting to join prisoner classes?" Jack met the captain's gaze steadily. "The principles of Muay Thai can benefit anyone, Captain. Self-discipline, respect, control, these are universal values." Drekthar's eyes narrowed. "And you, Officer Kett, what's your assessment of this situation?" Zara straightened, her tentacles stilling. "I believe Instructor Hawkins has created something valuable here, sir. The reduction in violent incidents speaks for itself. And if the staff can learn from these techniques as well, it could lead to better relations and increased security." The captain was silent for a long moment, his gaze shifting between Jack and Zara. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "Very well. You may continue with this experiment, but know that I'll be watching closely. Any hint of trouble, and it all ends." Dismissed. As they left the office, Jack and Zara shared a look of relief tinged with caution. They had bought more time, but the stakes were higher than ever. Over the next few days, Jack and Zara's covert meetings intensified. In quiet corners of the ship, they plotted and planned, bringing in trusted allies from both the prisoner population and the ship's staff. "We need to move carefully," Zora warned during one such meeting. "Drekthar suspects something, but he doesn't know what. We have to use that to our advantage." Jack nodded, his eyes distant as he considered their next move. "We've made progress, but we're still a long way from our goal. We need to expand our influence, reach more of the crew." It was during one of these strategy sessions that an unexpected opportunity presented itself. Dr. Xon, the ship's chief medical officer, approached Jack after a training class, his multifaceted eyes glimmering with excitement. "Instructor Hawkins, I have a proposition for you," the alien doctor began. "I've been analyzing the physiological effects of your training program on various species. The results are fascinating. I believe we could develop a specialized rehabilitation protocol, one that combines your teachings with targeted medical treatments." Jack's mind raced with the possibilities. A medical angle could provide access to restricted areas of the ship, to systems and information they desperately needed. He glanced at Zara, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "That sounds intriguing, Doctor," Jack replied carefully. "I'd be happy to collaborate with you on this project." As Dr. Xon excitedly outlined his ideas, Jack and Zara exchanged a meaningful look. Their circle of influence was growing, and with it, the potential for real change aboard the Kraken. The next few weeks saw a flurry of activity. Under the guise of developing this new rehabilitation protocol, Jack gained access to previously restricted areas of the ship. He worked closely with Dr. Xon, all the while gathering crucial information about the Kraken's systems and security measures. Zara, meanwhile, used her position to subtly influence duty rosters and security protocols. Slowly but surely, they were positioning their allies in key locations throughout the ship. But as their plans progressed, so too did the risks. Whispers of discontent began to circulate among those staff members still loyal to the old way of doing things. Captain Drekthar's scrutiny intensified, his cold eyes following Jack's every move. The tension came to a head during a ship-wide assembly. Captain Drekthar had called all prisoners and staff together, ostensibly to discuss the success of the rehabilitation program. But as Jack stood on the raised platform beside the captain, he could sense the underlying current of suspicion. "The changes we've seen aboard the Kraken are unprecedented," Drekthar began, his voice echoing through the massive gathering hall. "Rehabilitation rates are at an all-time high. Violent incidents have decreased dramatically. And yet," the captain's gaze swept over the assembled crowd, lingering on Jack. "And yet, I can't help but wonder if we're losing sight of our primary mission. This is a prison ship, not a luxury cruise. We're here to contain the galaxy's most dangerous criminals, not coddle them." A murmur ran through the crowd. Jack could see the uncertainty on many faces, the fear of losing the progress they'd made. He knew he had to act. "Captain," Jack said, stepping forward, "if I may address the assembly." Drekthar's eyes narrowed, but he nodded curtly. "By all means, Instructor Hawkins. Enlighten us." Jack turned to face the crowd, his gaze sweeping over the sea of faces. Alien and human, prisoner and guard. In that moment, he knew that everything hinged on his next words. "We've all heard the saying that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link." Jack began, his voice calm but carrying to every corner of the hall. "For too long, the galactic justice system has treated prisoners as that weak link, something to be contained and forgotten. But what if, instead, we viewed each person here as a potential source of strength?" He paused, letting his words sink in. "The techniques I've been teaching aren't just about physical combat. They're about finding balance, about controlling our impulses and channeling our energy into positive change. And we've seen the results, not just in reduced violence, but in increased cooperation, in a sense of purpose that many here had lost." Jack's gaze met Drekthar's, a silent challenge in his eyes. "This isn't about coddling, Captain. It's about recognizing potential. Every being in this room, regardless of their past, has the capacity for growth, for redemption. By nurturing that potential, we're not just changing individual lives. We're creating a safer, more stable environment for everyone aboard this ship." The assembly hall was silent, all eyes fixed on Jack. He could see the impact of his words reflected in the faces before him: hope, determination, and a growing sense of unity. "The Kraken has the opportunity to be more than just a prison," Jack continued. "We can be a model for rehabilitation across the galaxy, a place where justice isn't just about punishment, but about transformation, where every individual, regardless of their species or their past, has the chance to become something greater." As Jack finished speaking, a slow wave of applause began to build. It started with a few scattered individuals, but soon spread, growing into a thunderous roar that filled the massive hall. Prisoners and guards alike were on their feet, their divisions forgotten in a moment of shared purpose. Captain Drekthar stood rigid, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the scene. As the applause finally died down, he stepped forward. An impassioned speech, Instructor Hawkins, the captain said, his voice cold. But words are easy. Actions are what matter. You've been given considerable leeway in implementing your program. Now it's time to prove its worth. You have 1 month to show concrete results. Reduced recidivism rates, improved behavior across all sectors of the ship. If you fail, the program ends and you return to the status of a regular prisoner. Is that understood? Jack nodded solemnly. Perfectly, Captain. Thank you for the opportunity. As the assembly dispersed, Jack caught Zora's eye in the crowd. They both knew that the captain's challenge was both a threat and an opportunity. They had 1 month to put their plans into action, to turn the Kraxen from a prison into something revolutionary. The game had changed, the stakes higher than ever. But as Jack looked out over the sea of faces, aliens and humans united in a common cause, he felt a surge of hope. The real work was just beginning, and the future of the Kraxen, perhaps of the entire galactic justice system, hung in the balance. As the crowd filed out of the assembly hall, Jack knew that the next month would determine everything. The seeds of change had been planted. Now it was time to nurture them, to transform the Kraxen into a beacon of hope in the vast darkness of space. The transformation. The Kraxen hung in the void of space, a metal behemoth that had long been a symbol of punishment and containment. But in the month following Captain Drekthar's challenge, the ship had become a crucible of change, its very foundations shaking with the tremors of transformation. Jack Hawkins stood in the observation deck, his gaze fixed on the star-studded expanse beyond the reinforced windows. The past 4 weeks had been a whirlwind of activity, each day a delicate balance between pushing for change and avoiding suspicion. Quite a view, isn't it? Zara Kett's voice broke through Jack's reverie. The alien officer moved to stand beside him, her tentacles swaying gently in a gesture Jack had come to recognize as contemplative. It reminds me of the vastness of what we're trying to accomplish, Jack replied, his voice low. Are we ready for today? Zara's multifaceted eyes glimmered. As ready as we'll ever be. The captain has called for a full status report. Every department head will be there, along with representatives from the Galactic Prison Authority. Jack nodded, taking a deep breath to center himself. Today was the culmination of everything they had worked for, the moment that would determine the future of not just the Kraxen, but potentially the entire concept of galactic incarceration. As they made their way to the main conference room, Jack could feel the energy thrumming through the ship. Prisoners and staff alike moved with purpose, the lines between them blurred by weeks of shared goals and mutual respect. The conference room was packed when they arrived. Captain Drekthar sat at the head of the table, his cold eyes surveying the assembled group. Representatives from various alien species filled the seats, their diverse physiologies a testament to the complexity of the task at hand. Let's begin. Drekthar's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. Dr. Xan, your report on the medical aspects of this rehabilitation program. The alien doctor rose, his spindly limbs gesticulating excitedly as he spoke. The results are nothing short of remarkable, Captain. We've seen a 78% reduction in stress-related illnesses across all species. Physical health markers have improved dramatically, and we've even observed accelerated healing rates in individuals participating in the Muay Thai training. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room. Jack caught the eye of a Galactic Prison Authority representative, noting the impressed expression on their face. Next came reports from security, detailing the sharp decline in violent incidents and escape attempts. The Education Department spoke of increased participation in vocational programs, with many prisoners acquiring skills that could lead to meaningful employment upon release. As the reports continued, Jack could see the shift in the room's atmosphere. Even the most skeptical observers were leaning forward, engaged by the undeniable evidence of positive change. Finally, it was Jack's turn to speak. He stood, feeling the weight of every gaze upon him. What we've accomplished here goes beyond numbers and statistics. Jack began, his voice steady and clear. We've created a community, a place where individuals from across the galaxy, regardless of their past mistakes, can find purpose and redemption. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. But this is just the beginning. The techniques and philosophies we've implemented here have the potential to revolutionize the entire concept of criminal rehabilitation. Imagine a galaxy where prisons aren't just places of punishment, but centers of transformation, where those who've lost their way can find a new path, becoming productive members of society. The room was silent, hanging on Jack's every word. Even Captain Drekthar's usually impassive face showed a flicker of interest. "We have an opportunity here," Jack continued, his voice gaining intensity. "An opportunity to lead the way in creating a more just, more compassionate galaxy. The Kraxan can be more than a prison ship. It can be a beacon of hope, a model for reform across the stars." As Jack concluded his speech, the room erupted in discussion. The Galactic Prison Authority representatives huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. Captain Drekthar's expression was unreadable as he observed the scene. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship, red warning lights flashed, and the ship's AI voice echoed through the corridors. "Warning! Unidentified vessels approaching. Hostile intent detected." Chaos erupted in the conference room. Captain Drekthar barked orders, calling for battle stations to be manned. But as the ship rocked with the first impact of enemy fire, a chilling realization set in. With the recent changes to staff rotations and security protocols, they were woefully unprepared for an attack. In that moment of crisis, Jack saw their chance. He locked eyes with Zara, a silent understanding passing between them. This was the ultimate test of everything they had built. "Captain," Jack's voice cut through the panic. "Let us help. The prisoners, the staff we've trained. We can defend the ship together." Drekthar's eyes narrowed, suspicion warring with desperation. Another blast rocked the ship, and the decision was made. "Do it," he growled. What followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Prisoners and guards moved in perfect synchronization, their Muay Thai training translating seamlessly into coordinated defense tactics. Jack led from the front, his movements a blur as he directed teams to critical areas of the ship. In the engine room, a group of former rivals, a Zorblaxian engineer and a Centaurian hacker, worked in tandem to boost the ship's shields. In the medical bay, Dr. Xon coordinated triage efforts, his team a mix of staff and prisoners working seamlessly to treat the injured. Through it all, Jack and Zara moved like twin forces of nature, their shared vision of a united Kraxan becoming reality in the crucible of battle. The attacking pirates, expecting an easy target in a prison ship, found themselves outmatched by the coordinated efforts of a crew, fighting not just for survival, but for a shared future. Hours later, as the last of the pirate ships retreated into the depths of space, an eerie calm settled over the Kraxan. The ship bore the scars of battle, but it had emerged victorious and irrevocably changed. In the aftermath, Captain Drekthar stood on the bridge, surveying the damage reports. His gaze fell on Jack and Zara, standing side by side amidst the bustle of repair efforts. "It seems," the captain said slowly, "that I may have underestimated the potential of your program, Hawkins." Jack met the captain's gaze steadily. "It's not my program, sir. It belongs to everyone on this ship. We've all built this together." Drekthar was silent for a long moment, his cold eyes showing a hint of something new. "Respect." "Indeed," he said finally. "It seems the Kraxan has become something unprecedented. The Galactic Prison Authority will need to be informed of these developments." As the captain turned away, Jack and Zara shared a look of triumph tinged with caution. They had won a major victory, but the real work was just beginning. In the days that followed, news of the Kraxan's transformation spread across the galaxy. The ship that had once been a dark symbol of punishment became a beacon of hope and reform. Delegations from worlds across the cosmos arrived to study the Kraxan model of rehabilitation. Jack Hawkins, once a mysterious prisoner, became a respected figure in galactic criminal justice reform. But he never forgot the lessons of Muay Thai: balance, discipline, and the constant pursuit of self-improvement. The Kraxan continued its journey through the stars, no longer just a prison ship, but a floating academy of second chances. And in its wake, a wave of change swept across the galaxy, challenging old notions of justice and punishment. As Jack stood once more in the observation deck, watching distant stars drift by, he felt a sense of peace. The path ahead was long, with many challenges yet to face, but he had faith in the community they had built, in the power of compassion, and the indomitable spirit of those seeking redemption. The human Muay Thai master had not just escaped his prison. He had transformed it, and in doing so, begun the transformation of an entire galaxy. As the Kraxan sailed on into the unknown, it carried with it the hopes and dreams of countless beings, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and the universal desire for growth and change. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, the future looked bright, not just for Jack Hawkins, but for every soul aboard the Kraxan and beyond. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, welcoming a new era of justice, compassion, and hope.